Okay, on today's video, I am actually going to cover another PPC money-making strategy for you to be able to either make your ads work on Google if you're not doing it already, or if you're running ads on Google and you're doing it for a few months already and saying, geez, no one's winning but Google here, which I hear all the time. It's a common kind of saying that I hear. I guarantee PPC, where we manage clients' ad campaigns on Google, guarantee results there. So with that said, I'm going to let you know what we do. If I'm running into a situation where a client comes to me, they're not getting results, one of my first go-to things here that you could be able to use for yourself, of course for free, since you're doing it yourself, and know what the quote-unquote pros are doing, or basically one of the main ways that somebody who is a pro versus, let's just say, an amateur getting into this is going to do and know to do, so you can do it for yourself. And basically, if you're not making money, you will be able to make money by the time you're done watching this video. So anyway, the actual title of this video is "Do keywords that contain keywords like cheap, best, high quality, or even keyword or implied keywords that mean free, do they actually really pay off?" In other words, the point I'm trying to get across here for this video is, if you sell light bulbs, if you are wondering, or as you will see in this video, should wonder, I wonder if I should be bidding on, if I sell light bulbs, should I bid on light bulb? Okay, that one's obvious, but do I target high quality light bulb? Do I target, low quality light bulb? Do I target, which I guess not that so much, but you could, of course. Not many people will be searching for that. But cheap light bulb or inexpensive light bulb. Or if you sell, you're trying to offer information, is where this would come up a lot. Somebody looking for free information versus just the information itself, which even if your information's free, you may or may not want that person. So there's these descriptive words, which the two main descriptive words that I'm going to always see in a niche is whether somebody wants quality or somebody wants something to do with the price. Sometimes the people even search for expensive. If you sell something that's expensive, maybe only if that user implies they want so-and-so that is expensive. Expensive mattresses versus if you sell mattresses, just saying mattress. If my mattress is $5,000 and it's really is a higher quality mattress, maybe I don't want to advertise to people just looking for a regular mattress. That would, in that type of situation, you normally would have 2, 3, 4, or 5 times as much return from somebody who typed in and was a little bit more descriptive and said they actually wanted a higher end mattress and targeted people along those lines, which in that case, most of your sales can come from there. You could either only do that, or as you'll see in this video, there's different, there's areas of gray where if they don't say they want something expensive, you'll still do it, but you just won't make as much off of those, and then therefore buy, in which you will spend less for anything else where they're not so explicit in saying that they want something that's expensive. So in general, though, you're going to group things together. So all keywords that mean cheap, do I want them or do I not want them? To all keywords expensive, do I want them or do I not want them? That is kind of what I was trying to get across with these example of keywords that are in the title of this video. So anyway, with that said, how to actually tell if you should be using one category over the other, and how to actually get the maximum profitability in your niche from all available keywords. Taking a little from here, a little from there. Maybe you'll have expensive, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll have cheap, maybe you won't. Maybe you will have both expensive and cheap keywords, but you'll spend a little more or less, run a little bit more aggressively or less aggressively for cheap versus expensive. So there's a lot of different things to think about when deciding what quote-unquote groups of keywords, descriptors, as you would add on the beginning or end of a keyword, that indicates what type of class of product or service you're looking for. This does apply for services as well. In order for you to suck up the maximum amount of profit that's in your space from Google Ads, which everything I'm about when I and explain on my videos here, it's not about if PPC will work, it's just how much. And how am I going to suck up every dollar of profit that's available there on Google by identifying what's working, what's not, stuff that's sort of working. We're going to go semi-aggressive in terms of the bidding on that. Stuff that's working a lot, we're going to go super aggressive. And then stuff that's just absolute trash, figuring out how to weed it out. And if we can only make so good a judgment up front as to what's working, what's not. Even me, myself, having worked on over 300 different accounts on Google, I still go in guessing. I've only got to come out, if I'm lucky, 70% understanding of what's going to be profitable or not. And then from there, the extra 30% where, where there's huge potential still. So the 30% I don't know about could be where the difference between making $1 million a year versus $5 million a year, realistically speaking, comes from using your data to identify if you want the free keywords, do you not want the free keywords, do you want the cheap keywords, do you not want the cheap keywords, and keywords that are similar to cheap that you would find under the thesaurus related to cheap and so on and so forth. So I'm going to tell you how to tell on this video and just tell you the exact strategy I use to make a campaign either work better, if it's not working good enough yet, and I got to guarantee increased ROI on a campaign or cheaper cost per lead or what have you, or just to start out a campaign and you're in a fairly wide niche and figure out which of these we should focus on because normally we're starting out on a smaller budget. You could spend 50 grand a month on ads. We know our starting budget's $3K a month. We're going to make that work, and then we're going to go to 4K, 5K, so on and so forth. But being able to cherry pick and know which one we should go for so that 2-3 months into that starting a campaign at the $3 grand a month in ad spend, we're going to know at the end of that which of these main categories, as I've announced here, cheap, expensive, free being in its own category, and people that want quality versus they're not specific as to wanting a quote-unquote quality product or service you should stick with to get the maximum profit in your niche. So anyway, I have a short list of things I'm going to go over, and this is going to tell you exactly how I do this for my own campaign so you can extract the maximum amount of profit out of your campaigns, like I said, what kind of money you can earn. That'll all be announced in this video. As far as the background, though, I kind of went over it. What kind of customers are profitable in my business, question mark. So we don't know a lot of times. Obviously, if you know that you're offering something that's in the top 10% of price category in your space, then probably we'll have to just go after people that want and are verbalizing, I want an expensive or high quality product. But again, we can only get so good like I said on a lot of different videos, if you're starting out with a small budget, you could always start conservative. If you know you offer a product that's way more expensive than anything else, maybe we just start by targeting, which I would commonly do, just start targeting people who are explicit in saying they want something that's higher quality. Make that work, and then we can start testing the keywords where they don't say they want something expensive, but they don't also say cheap, and then go there until we figure out everything on that account that has a potential to generate a ROI at an 8-to-1 return or 10-to-1 return, whatever you're looking for there. And you're going to group them. The main thing is, Corey, you're saying, yeah, I understand it. One keyword doesn't work over another, so I know how to tell if a keyword's working or not. What this video is still predicated on is what you're trying to derive from one keyword that has the word cheap in it, and drawing conclusions so that other keywords that also mean cheap, you're going to find next to cheap in the thesaurus, you should be able to apply there, because each keyword doesn't have enough data on it to tell you on a keyword by keyword basis effectively or for a very long time what you should be spending on that particular keyword. Whereas if we look at one keyword, we could generally tell that whole general group of keywords that would have cheap on it are worth, so we can then more quickly decide how to get the most out of that whole cheap category that we can, and we don't waste a bunch of money in the process. So what this is going to do is tell you if you should spend money, but more so, what exactly should you spend your money on so that you are going to maximize and suck up every dollar of profit out of your space running Google ads. Of course, this also applies to Bing ads as well for your business as possible. So even if you don't have the cheapest prices though, or you have the highest quality product or service, the results that you find with all this using my methodology really might surprise you. So I've had it, just to give you to verbalize that a bit more, I've had many times where something wasn't the cheapest and keywords where they were looking for a cheap product, it was profitable. It was like just as profitable as if they didn't say cheap or very close to it. And so, not to say that people looking, if they were actually, if I sold, going back to my light bulb example, my light bulb's the most expensive one in the market as per what's advertising on Google right now through the ads, which is what you're mainly going to use as a draw of reference. Like what the other ads is what you're, not people that are offline, and even organically, I wouldn't look at that. But I'm the most expensive one offering the light bulbs I offer that are running Google ads for our market. If someone says they want cheap, then yeah, that probably won't really work with the dart, if at all. But if you're middle of the ground, or definitely if you're in between middle and cheapest, those cheap keywords generally will work almost as good as the cheapest keyword. Because you got to remember, not everybody's going to go ahead and click through every single ad. Even if people are price conscious, they're inherently lazy. Humans are inherently lazy species. So if you say cheap, I know this is a little bit, I guess let's just put it, you shouldn't do this, let's just put it that way, but let's just say hypothetically, if you put cheapest in the ad, they're going to assume your product's the cheapest, just buy anyway. They're not going to click through 10 other ads, which if you didn't recognize, yeah, there's only 4 ads at the top of Google, but those rotate out, so really, in most markets that are competitive, there's like 20 people that are going to show up at different times and different keywords, especially for those top 4 spots. Because Google is trying to always run a test to see which company's ad should be shown and exactly what time, based upon thousands of different parameters to make the most money and to give their users the best experience. So in other words, just don't be discouraged and don't make any drastic assumptions about your business as to whether or not the cheap category will work, or the quality, high quality or expensive category will work, if you want to put it that way, as well as the free keyword category as well. Like I said, you could start out conservative, but you might be surprised later on if you try some of these other keywords that are like cheap and you're not cheap at all, you're just in the middle, how much that's going to work. And at the very least, you're going to identify what the non-cheap keywords are worth to your business, whether it's half as much, whether it's 25% as much as the ones who type in a keyword, light bulbs, without the descriptive word cheap on that keyword. And then so you'll get another, instead of making $1 million a year, you're making $1.5 million at the 8-to-1 return you're looking for, because you identified what the keywords that had cheap with it were worth. You told Google what you were willing to pay for those keywords, because the return from those general group of keywords, and then therefore you got a little bit more profit overall than you could have gotten otherwise. So anyway, here's what you do, getting down to brass tacks. So you have, what I put that over here on the side is, if you've been advertising for more than a few months already, you have some data in your account, in other words. And of course, if you've had tracking hooked up at the same time, I should have also listed this, but for space purposes, if you know what generated a sale, if you're e-commerce, ultimately you should have whether or not a lead turned into a sale, because you could, through a term called offline conversion tracking, take your leads, figure out which leads turn into a sale that come from your ads, pipe that back into your account, and then therefore you can see what keywords, so on and so forth, drove what level of return and what level of profit, so you can drive a little bit better using the system here, whether you want the cheap category or not, and what value it brings, so that you could actually use this system. If not, just knowing whether a keyword produced a lead or not is another, it is still worth something to you. I'll just leave it at that. But if you've been running, assuming that you had the conversion data in there, if not, you set up the tracking first, as I just described it, you'll get a few months worth of data. If you have like a $3,000 a month budget, or $5,000 or $10,000, whatever your budget is, if you got campaigns that are saying limited by budget, meaning the campaigns are just shutting off before the end of the day because you've spent up all your money, and the keywords, if they were running all day, would spend more than what you've set as a limit for those campaigns, and therefore is a limit as a whole, as on that account. Then what this method right here is going to be able to get you a lot more from your budget by grouping your keywords together, and not just looking at a keyword by keyword basis if I should use a keyword or not. You're going to use macro level thinking here to decide which of your entire market you should be focusing on. What's that 10 or 20% of all the possible keywords you should focus on that's going to get you the highest return basically today, and then you can move on to try another thing at a later date. And so you're going to be able to basically, 2 to 5x the ROI on your account just through this methodology here. Again, assuming you have the tracking and then you have some data already. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at, so you're going to simply go to go under keywords in your account. This goes for all campaigns. And then you're going to click on, the search terms. And then when under search terms, you're going to go click on the filter tab or filter button. And then you're going to type in contains. And then you're going to, within contains, you're going to type in cheap, cheapest, cheaper, and any word that would mean cheap and the thesaurus that would go along with it. And you're going to put them on separate lines. And basically what that'll do is it'll filter down the performance of all the search terms that triggered your ads in the last lifetime of your spend in your account that had the word cheap or meaning cheap in it. And it's going to tell you the return down at the bottom of the screen of what the ROI was, how many conversions you got, so on and so forth. And it's going to also say filtered keyword, filter terms, and then your results just of the metrics I just described. And then it's also going to say whole account. So it's directly going to tell you if they use the word cheap, here's what the return was. If they did not use, if they used cheap, but they used some other word, not just cheap, here's what the results were. And so that's going to tell you if cheap works better than the average keyword in the account or not, and if not, by how much less, so you can identify if it's worth running or not. You're going to do the same thing for cheap as a whole category, so you're going to find all the words that mean cheap and do that. Then you're going to find all the keywords that mean quality, high quality, best, top, best reviewed, and ultimately, good thing I thought of best reviewed. So you could do either contains or exact when you do your filtering there using the methodology I just told you there. You're going to want to have contains. So best would also then, it would also look at best reviewed. I would also say reviewed just as a whole, so you'll get like highest reviewed. So that in terms of the quality there, that you're going to find all the keywords that mean quality. By the way, in terms of trying to figure out all the terms that mean quality and all the words that mean cheap, you can go through your search term history and just find some examples. And obviously, if you don't get every keyword, it's not the end of the world. This will though give you a general idea as a category as a whole, that whole category as a whole, cheap versus someone looking for quality, how it produces as a whole compared to everything in the account. So you can make decisions on what you're going to do to extract more profit out of your account and or just bring the ROI of your account up to an acceptable level. You're also going to do free. For most niches, I'm going to say 90% of the time, don't use free. Use free as a negative keyword. In some spaces, it can work. If you're offering an ebook up front, again, like I said, free can work. What's more likely is free won't work as good as non-free, just to give you a heads up, but it'll be worth something. And when everybody else automatically, see, here's the thing that catches everybody up, but just basically leave it at that. They will say, for instance, mobile traffic. Oh, nobody buys on mobile. I'll block it all. 0% bid adjustment for mobile. Well, I love it when people do that because mobile's not worth zero. If somebody said, I'll give you a truckload of mobile traffic, it's free, would you take it? Of course you would take it. It may be only worth 5% of what desktop traffic is worth, but you knowing how much the mobile traffic's worth, and with everybody else being so close-minded, we'll just put it that way, you could then put negative 95% bid adjustment for mobile and then get all the mobile traffic that over half of the people in your space just don't want. You'll start getting it, and then it will produce 10-20% of the profit in your business because you're the only one of the people in your space that actually took the time to figure out what the mobile traffic was actually worth and just bought it. You're just playing a game of arbitrage. It's almost like you're investing in a stock. Money in stocks come from, if you're a speculator, from figuring out what other people don't know. Well, you're just figuring out what the mobile traffic is worth, and then therefore, you're the one who gets all the return from that. It's a little bit different, but in this particular case, you're going to find out what free is worth. Not very much, but it has some value. What suck up the available profit from free that's there and available to take. But your options, like I was alluding to before, isn't so much to say, I want all keywords with the word cheap in it, or not, or none at all. Your options are, I want all of the keywords, none of the keywords that have cheap or high quality, depending if you're talking about cheap or the high quality group or free group, or go plus or minus bid adjustment on all those keywords by 100% or plus 100% or negative 100%. So, in other words, what you're going to do, once you've figured out what cheap search terms as a whole produce for your business, if it's producing half the ROI as everything else, then you're simply going to go in and put, negative 50% bid adjustment on all keywords that have cheap in it. Pretty simple, right? So, unless it's going to be, basically, as long as it's producing 10% of the ROI that the whole account as a whole is, I'm going to be using the bid adjustment angle because that's, again, going to give us the arbitrage opportunity to get as much as we can from that space. Of course, then your ROI will go up because everything you were overpaying for is now weighted out of your account. But you're also still going to get additional profit that you would have got than just being totally closed-minded and shutting it all off. Because that's most of the profit you can make in PPC is just coming down, understanding how to price certain traffic over other traffic. Because very, very little of the time will all traffic from one traffic source give you exactly the return that you want, and at the same time the volume that you want. You may get something that has a good return right off the bat, but if you knew how to dial in your what you're paying, you could get a lot more from it because you could push it a little bit harder, let's just say, so that you're, instead of showing up half the time for the stuff that's super profitable, you're showing up all the time now. So anyway, you get the general idea. So you're going to use your search terms report in the filtering option there to figure out which of these categories you want to be in and how much. You're going to scrape the totals, and then you're going to identify, do I want all of it, none of it, or some variation of it as a whole. And so again, the main thing that you're going to do here is you're going to look at and do your bid adjustment as a whole on all the cheap keywords, because I would prefer I could add a bid adjustment the way that I described. You do this by figuring out what is the return of that particular keyword, so I can adjust the bid and tell Google how much I'm willing to pay for that keyword in specific based upon its historical performance of how much ROI it brings. You need usually 1,000 clicks on any one keyword in order to make a good, statistically significant assumption about any one keyword, what the bid should be. And the more data you get, the more accurate of a decision you can make, and so on and so forth. So if you've been advertising for 6 months, you might only have 2 or 3 keywords in your account that's got 1,000 clicks. So this cuts out a ton of time, ton of aggravation, ton of wasted money, and time having to wait to actually get to the point where it's profitable, which the more valuable thing is, you want to make profit today. So you can start building your business up today. This allows you to just tunnel under or hurdle over, however you want to describe it, to get to the result much, much faster. And without going broke, in the process, which is the other obvious benefit to this process. So this is the process that I use and what I would recommend you use as well. Now, assuming you've done that already, you've set your bids, or you shut off or turned on cheap versus quality versus free. Once you find out, sometimes, like if you started out and you didn't have any cheap keywords, of course, once you've made that profitable, I would introduce cheap keywords. I would run 10% of my budget towards the cheap. I would get my starting data, look at cheap as a whole, and then adjust by bid. And then once that's profitable, of course, you can move on to something else, which is the process I always go through for building up an account to 5 figures of spend a month. You start at 3K a month and you go up to 50,000 a month, one campaign at a time, seeing what that new campaign can do, correcting the bid so that it produces the level of return that it's capable to produce for your company, that you need to be in business and profitable, and to recycle profit you're making back into the ads to have it self-sustain itself. And then you work on the next campaign, you devote 10% of your budget towards that new thing, you find out what that new traffic source is worth, and you keep going. But once you've done pretty much what I described above, you could decide if you want to expand that category through finding more keywords. So if it wasn't obvious, so if you find initially people don't do super in-depth research when they're finding the keywords starting out. So they'll maybe have a few cheap keywords. They won't have them all possible keywords with the word cheap in it that are eligible to run and have enough search volume. So what you can do, of course, what I would do is I would take all keywords. If I knew cheap was profitable at 30% the level of the rest of the keywords, and I have a negative 70% bid adjustment on all cheap keywords that are in there now, I'm going to go look for all the other cheap keywords to see what I can get from them. So, and the shortcut way of doing that is to simply go into, extract all the keywords you have, add cheap before and after the keyword, run a test campaign to see if you're going to get a low search volume warning, which means you can't run it because it doesn't get searched enough. And the ones that don't, well, then I found another keyword, which then I can assign unique bidding for it, which is gonna, if I do that, and then if I silo things out so that any of the other campaigns, if it has the word cheap in it, I have negative cheap as a keyword, so that all the cheap traffic goes to my new campaign. What is going to happen is it's going to be able to make the rest of my campaigns more efficient, and my cheap campaign is going to be pretty efficient because I understand how to control the spend and actually be able to enforce a negative 70% bid adjustment on the cheap keywords, and the whole ROI of the account will go up and the whole potential of the account will go up doing that. So that I call that, you find all the different permutations of a keyword that has, to do keyword research. And to do keyword research, I'm starting out going to the Google keyword tool, but then when I find, oh, well, it looks like some keywords have best, I'm going to see if all the rest of the keywords, if you add best before and after, are its own keyword or could be. And if so, I'm going to add that as a separate keyword so that I can be even more granular with my bidding on a keyword by keyword basis. In this case, we're taking a shortcut and we're going to group all keywords, for instance, that have best / top / high quality, because generally speaking, that's going to be the more reasonable way to get to overall profit faster than doing a bid adjustment on every keyword like I was stating earlier. So anyway, once you have that, the last thing you can do to take advantage of what I just described to you, this whole phenomena, is to take the most relevant competitors. So taking it one step backwards, if you found that cheap works but quality doesn't, what I'm going to do right away, if I haven't done it already, or I'll usually do it a little bit later, but just for all practical purposes for you, to keep it simple, I'm going to go find all my direct competitors that are profiting, that are quote unquote from their unique USP, or their unique value proposition for their company and what they're offering for that product or service is being cheap versus higher quality. I'm going to find all those people, and I'm going to set up a search campaign that targets each of those competitors. So when somebody types in the brand name or the product name or the trade name or the legal name, whatever, for that company, my ad's going to show up and it's going to say specifically why my product or service is better than that quote unquote other cheap one. So they come to my site and purchase. And I'm going to, sometimes you can get away with having one ad for all your, so-called cheap competitors there. A lot of times, I'd say about half or a little bit more than half of the time, it's not going to work if I don't do it on I say specifically why I'm better than that competitor, by the way, and more specific than that, I'm going to say why my product that is directly comparable to that competitor's product on a product by product basis is better than that product, and drive people to my product instead, because that's going to get you a high quality score, which you need high quality scores in your account to do a lot of profit or be profitable.